Hey, so I was talking in my last video about how it makes more sense to try to change yourself than to focus your attention on somebody else showing up differently in your life. And the reason for that is because how you see yourself, what you believe about yourself, shines through in your vibe, which when I say vibe, I mean sort of the energy you bring, your mannerisms, the words that you choose, how you speak, how you dress, how you carry yourself, all the things that the sum total of what you think of yourself and what you believe about yourself and everything else comes through without you realizing it. People often think that things about them aren't obvious when they are. When you meet somebody, the way you are and the way they are creates a relationship, right? That's basically it at its simplest, basest level. And so this is also why you should never, I think, ask anybody to change their behavior. When you have a conversation with your significant other about things that they're doing or not doing for you, it's almost just like, it's like it makes it worse, because whatever the relationship is will not change unless one of the parties changes. It's like, okay, if it's something like, hey, you never call me when you're going to be 10 minutes late, I'd really appreciate it if you did. That's one thing. I mean, hopefully if somebody cares about you, they can do something like that. But when it's something big, like something is way off about the dynamic of the relationship, you've probably experienced this. Talking about it does nothing, essentially, other than shine a big light on the problem. And it's futile, because relationships between people occur totally naturally, and for the most part, I think, outside of your conscious awareness. Like, you just respond to people the way you do. People make you feel the way they make you feel for reasons that, unless you really sit and think about it, you pretty much can't come up with. And I wanted to talk about this because there's one aspect of this that I really hate, that really bothers me. I just had a little brief exchange with somebody about it on Reddit the other day too. There is something I think really bad and really dangerous in this whole conscious creation thing, especially if you're into it because you're trying to manipulate people. And this dangerous thing is believing that simply because you elicit something from somebody means that it's your fault. There's a big difference between those two things. If the relationship between you and somebody else that happens organically results in that party doing abhorrent things, that does not make it your fault. When it is said that, or explained that, part of the dynamic involves you, that does not mean that it's your fault. It simply means that the dynamic is what it is, and here's your role in it. That's it. If you are playing a role in a relationship with a cheater, that does not mean it is your fault that that person is cheating. It simply means that you're playing a role in the energetic dynamic in which that is allowed to occur, or in which that occurring is facilitated. Okay, that's it. It's not your fault. It doesn't make it okay. And this is especially true in relationships with abusers. And I really wanted to touch on this because I have up close personal experience with this, and I allowed myself to be abused by somebody for far too long, partially because you know, I believed that my perception was part of it. Sometimes you eliciting abusive behavior from somebody is just simply that you're there. You know, if you notice men who abuse women, it's not like they abuse one person and then the next person they don't. And then, you know, if you are with an abusive person long enough, you will come to find out that they have a long history of doing this. In the relationship I was in my 20s, this guy treated me terribly. He was physically abusive to me on a couple of occasions. And because of how I felt about myself at the time, I literally felt like nobody else would want me. And, you know, the experience I was having with him didn't help. And I was blamed for his behavior. The stuff that he did was always excused by pointing to whatever my role had been in the situation leading up to the abuse. And, you know, I bought it, honestly. I was young. I was, 24. I bought it, and, you know, it turned out that I ended up talking to the ex-girlfriend that he had lived with for a couple of years before me. Turned out he'd been doing the same stuff to her. You know, they had a different relationship dynamic. It wasn't like how ours was, but, you know, because she was different. You know, the elements that always come out in relationships for me were there in this abusive relationship. And knowing this person that he dated before, who I got to know a little bit after that, and I've seen throughout the years since then, she plays out the same thing in her life. Like, it's, you know, you bring your own crap in. But when there's an abuser involved, there is a track record throughout history of physical abuse and mental abuse and outrageous things being said and done. And that's not your fault. That's that person's fucking problem. And this idea that you can stay in a relationship with an abuser and via your thoughts or intentions within the situation, change this guy into like, this is like you can't change a hoe into a housewife situation. And you need to take that seriously. When your self-concept is not horribly damaged, the desire to change a person who is abusing you into someone that you could like marry and be happy with will just not be there. That's the thing. The desire to do that, the desire to change the behavior, whether or not you can do it, the desire for that is not a genuine, wholesome desire. It is a desperate desire that is coming from an injured part of you. And if it is possible, if the yogi masters can take this abusive guy and turn him into a gentle, loving, supportive partner, you know, if that's possible, it's highly unlikely that you're going to achieve that from whatever mental state you're in that's allowing you to be abused in the first place. And you should leave. Period. End of story. Neville Goddard did not spend 40 years of his life lecturing on this to keep women who are abused in abusive relationships. Working on your self-concept is where you need to go if you're in this situation. And take out a horribly abusive relationship, take out, I don't know, something that really is like an emergency. You can, there's levels to all of this. And this is why I think the specific person thing is just really bad for a lot of people. It's the same with any relationship. Yes, it's a two-way street. Yes, who and how you present yourself is part of the equation for how you're treated. Yes. Who you think you are, how you feel about yourself is apparent to other people. That does not mean that it's your fault that the relationship went south, that that person treated you horribly. If you get caught in this washing machine, if you get caught in this, it can eat up years of your life and leave you in a much worse place than where you started. I think that anyone that is in kind of a beaten down state of mind needs to do the hard thing and start taking a look at your self-concept and forget the other things that are going on. Forget these other concerns. Stop blaming yourself. All that does is perpetuate this mentality that there's something wrong with you, that you did something wrong, that now you have to make something up. No. When you get to the point where you have done what you need to do to be in the right frame of mind, you will not care about this, I promise. You will not look back on what this person did and blame yourself for it. Even if you feel like you created the perfect situation for them to do it, even if you feel totally stupid because you put up with behavior that you shouldn't have, and now you're kind of desperate to like get back into the relationship and prove that, you are somebody to be respected now or whatever, you will not care about that. And you will eventually realize that whoever the person was that's on the other end of that equation, that person has a self-concept that is just as destroyed and screwed up as yours is. Whatever, it's always equal. Relationships are always equal. Often you're suffering from the exact same issues, just in a different form. And when you can look at that clearly, it's really obvious. Like, for example, in the last relationship that I was in, my specific person, the last relationship I was in, we shared a common mental flaw. It just came out differently. We both didn't feel like we were worthy. We both had an issue with that. The way it came out for me was, I feel like I'm worthy in every area except the romantic one. I've felt like I have that's my area that I have to work on. Other than that though, I feel like a rock star. Like I feel like a winner. Everything's great. My self-concept is pretty good and I feel capable and proud of myself. But in this one area, it's been flawed. And so how that showed up and how it continues to show up, it kind of showed up with Steve when he was staying with me too, is I over-deliver so much. Like, I do all the work. With this guy, I bought him all kinds of stuff. I was always trying to make his life easier. He had some life situations going on while we were dating, and so I was like, look, don't worry. His job was like in the opposite direction of where I lived. And I'm like, don't worry, I'll come to you. I drove to his house every time. Like, it got to the point where he took it for granted. Like, I would show up and he would it was like I lived there, and I just would it just got to the point where I felt I was doing all the work. And so you would think that he didn't have that same problem, right? Because he was just receiving all this stuff from me. But the thing is, his problem isn't in romantic areas. It's with everything else. He doesn't feel proud of himself. He doesn't feel like he's accomplished enough. He doesn't feel like a winner. He doesn't feel good about himself in the ways that I do. And the way that came out was that he had the relationship I had with him, he had with literally everyone else. He was bending over backwards, trying to over-deliver to friends, to colleagues. He would drop everything and do something for someone if they asked. There were a bunch of incidents where I was just like, I can't believe that you allow this dynamic between you and this friend. Why would you allow this person to treat you that way? Because in my mind, I'm like, I'll only allow a romantic partner to treat me this way because this is really important. And he was like, I'll only allow my friends to treat me this way because this is really important. It's the same psychological issue in a different form. And this is how relationships, romantic relationships, I think especially, come together and play out. So whoever you're trying to manifest back, they're not better than you. They're not mentally better than you. You guys were a match for a reason. They're suffering from the same amount of screwed up self-concept that you are. So stop blaming yourself. And please, for the love of God, if you're in an abusive relationship, don't try to change it. If you must, exit the relationship. You know, use your imagination and your intention to imagine that person in a state of being healed where they could provide you the relationship you want. That's an option. Don't try to do it from within the situation. Abusive relationships are horribly psychologically damaging, and it can take a lot to get over it and to get to a good place when you're out. And that goes for verbally and emotionally abusive relationships too. So I just wanted to talk about that because I keep thinking about this aspect. I know that there are people out there falling prey to this. And if even one person sees this and avoids what I went through in my 20s, then every second of my breath for the last 16 and a half minutes was worth it.